Hi guys, Chwendu here, and you're welcome back to another tutorial with Eco Designs to Fit. So today we're going to be making this beautiful two-piece, but I'm gonna be showing you how to cut the upper part because the lower part is just a basic skirt, right? And I know that most of us already know how to cut the basic skirts. So you can see I have my pattern master, I have my French curve, not the pattern master. I have my straight ruler and then my paper scissors. If you've already been following me on my YouTube channel, I've already told you that it is very important to have your own scissors for cutting your paper. Do not use the scissors you are using for your fabric on your paper because it's going to blunt, okay? So you keep blunting your scissors. Now you can see I have my brown paper on top the table. Mind you, you can also use the white paper. I have divided this paper into two. I've removed one. We're going to be using this one for the front block, okay? So we are making a sloper. Yeah, pattern without seam allowance is a sloper, right? I'm sure you know this. So we are making a sloper. Now we'll be coming down by 1 inch from the top of my paper. All right. Please note that you need your body circumference measurement and also the length of the blouse. Now, the front and the back length of your blouse should not be the same because the proper human body, the bust is at the front and the back is flat, right? So yeah, from the top of my paper, which is the starting line, I'll be marking out 11 inches, which is for my bust points, okay? And after that, still leaving my tape on the top line, I'm going to mark down to the under bust point, 14 inches for mine. This is my measurement that I'm using, so please ensure you use your own body measurement. Now after this, I'm also going to be leaving my tape on this starting line and I'll be marking out 17 inches, which is my full front length, 17 inches, okay? My back length, which is my nape to waist, is 15 inches. Now that I've marked this, I'm going to place my tape on this waistline and then mark down to 9 inches. This is my waist to the hip point, okay? Mind you, this is not the length of my top. I just like drafting to the hip length so that I can easily take out the top length, okay? So I'm going to connect all these lines across just as you can see me doing like this. And after that, we are going to have to label these points, okay? So as you all know, I have the shoulder, I have the bust point, which is 11. I have the under bust point, 14 inches, the waist 17, and the hip length. This hip is 26 inches from the shoulder, okay? Now after that, you want to divide your shoulder length into two. So my shoulder length is 15 inches divided by 2 is 7.5 inches. And then I'm going to mark out my front neck width and the front neck depth. So for the front neck width, I'm using 3.5 inches. And for the front neck depth, I'm using 3.5 inches respectively. Now after this, we are going to have to come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. Of course, you know that our shoulder spine is not straight, okay? So reason why we come down by 1 inch to slant our shoulder. Now after this, move over to the bust point and you're going to ensure you have your shoulder length divided by 2 on that line. Now after that, what you want to do is to divide your bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5 inches. That is what you can see me trying to calculate. So my bust divided by 6 is 6.5 inches plus 1.5 is 8. So I'm going to mark this from the shoulder slope downwards, just as you can see me do. And after that, I'm going to connect, which is going to serve as my chest line, okay? Now after this, go ahead and connect this your shoulder slope to the neck width, and after that you're going to have to divide your armhole depth into two. So the distance between the shoulder slope and the chest line is the armhole depth. Divide it into two and then go in by 1/2 inch or 3/8 of an inch, okay? So either this one will work for you. Now after this, move over to the chest line and you're going to be inputting your bust circumference divided by 4. So my bust circumference is 39 inches. Please bear that in mind and make sure you use your own body measurements. So I marked it out, and after that I went ahead to connect from my shoulder slope to the middle of my arm's eye, and then to this my chest line. Can you see? So I've connected my sleeve circumference, right? That is my armhole circumference. Now after this, jump the under bust points, and then you're going to move over to the waist. Divide your waist circumference by 4 and mark it out. Okay. Now after that, also repeat the same thing on the hip point. So divide your hip circumference by 4 and mark it out, and then you're going to have to connect these 3 points together. Can you see what I just did? And that is that. And you can also see what I'm doing right here. Now you're going to understand the reason I'm doing this very, very soon. All right, so we have our basic bodice without that. So this is like a dartless block. Now after this, next thing I want to do is to mark out my nipple to nipple points. Okay, so my bust span measurement is 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now I'm going to mark it on the bust point, on the waistline, and down to the hip points, and then connect it using a straight line. Can you see? Now after all of this, next thing I want to do is to come over to the side just like this, and I'm going to measure what I have in between the space and divide it by 3. Okay, now I already know my value, but if you don't know your value, you're going to have to divide it before inputting your dart. So I'm going to be making use of half an inch on both sides. This means that I'm going to be taking out 1 inch for my darts, but then I'm going to also replace half of this 1 inch to the side. Okay, now after this, you're going to measure down to 7 inches, which is going to be the depth of your dart, and then you're going to connect your dart legs just like this. Can you see what I'm doing? So yeah, this is very simple. Just follow every step and whatever it is I'm trying to explain right now. And then after this, can you remember the half of an inch that we replaced on the side? You're going to connect that with a broken line, because this is now your natural body measurement. And please, for you to understand why we replace just half an inch instead of 1 inch, this is because we also want our blouse to be fitted around that place. We don't want it free, okay? But if you're making this for a person who really wants to be free, you're going to have to replace all of the 1 inch. I hope you understand. So that is that. Now after this, we are going to contour the under bust points. Okay, so I'm also going to be making use of half an inch because I already know my value. But if you don't know your value, you're going to have to measure what you have by the side and then use it. Okay, divide it by 3 and use it. So now I marked out half an inch, and please note that this half an inch that I just marked out is not from the bust span line. Okay, I measured it from the dart legs, and then you can see I'm trying to connect it with this part of my curve. Please take note of the part of the curve that I used to connect that. Okay, and then connected it down to the waist. Now after this, next thing I want to do, because we are doing the armhole princess dart for this, you can see I've measured my armhole. Okay, all around my armhole, I'm going to divide it into 2, and whatever I have, I'm going to start from the shoulder again and then trace it out and then mark. Can you see? So I'm going to mark. This is going to serve as the middle of my armhole as we speak, but not actually the middle of my armhole. This is going to serve as a place I'm going to be taking my princess line from. Can you see? And I've just connected it using my French curve just like this. And then you guys, after this, you're going to have to take in your darts, some darts. Okay, so I'm going to be doing 1 inch, which is half an inch for both sides, because we don't want that part of the armhole gaping. Okay, if you don't do this, you are likely to have that part of the armhole gaping. Okay, so that's why you need to contour this using half an inch, like 1 inch on both sides. So this is me trying to show you how to cut this out in case you're about cutting it out. Now I'm going to have to determine the length of my blouse, because remember I told you that the hip length is not the length I'll be using for my blouse. So from the waistline, I went down by 7 inches. Remember that from my waist to the hip point is like 9 inches, right? But if you take a look at the top, it is not up to the hip point, okay? So it's slightly above the hip area. So that's why I made use of 7 inches. And after that, I'll be coming up by 1.5 inches by the side and then slantly connect just like this. Can you see what I just did there? Now, after this, the next thing we are going to have to do is to come down by 1.5 inches from the waistline. Remember, we have like a style around the center front, at the down part of the center front, right? So this is what I'm trying to do. So come down by like 1.5 inches and connect it to the nipple to nipple line. Now, if you feel like you want to be stylish around that area, you can measure what you have, like divide that line into 2, and then you can curve it out like this. But for the inspiration we are following, it is made with a straight line, okay? So I'm just trying to show you what you can also do, just in case you don't want to follow the inspiration, you want your own to be different, okay? You can do this, but for me, I'm not going to be using that because I want to show you exactly how to draft and cut the inspiration, okay? Now, after this, from my neck depth, I'm going to be coming down by 3.5 inches. Can you see? So if you take a look at the V neckline around the neck depth, it's like 4 inches, but I'm doing 3.5 so that by the time I join, it will go down to 4 inches. And after that, from the center front of that my neck depth, I'm going to go in by half an inch and then connect just like this. Can you see? Now, after this, remember our princess line, you have to come up by 1 inch at least, okay? So that when you are joining the front, the center front and the side, nothing will short there. Because if you notice, when you are joining your bustiers, at times it tends to short, okay? Because already the side front has a lot of curve, so when you are trying to like join it, it will tend to short, okay? So that's why we always increase it so that we not run short of fabric, and that is that. So also we are going to also come out by at least half an inch, 1 inch, 0.75, okay, just to take care of that intake around that area as well. So you can see what I did, and then connected it to blend with the broken line, okay? Remember that this our broken line is now our natural body shape, okay, which is where we're going to cut out from. All right, now after this, you're going to come down by 2 inches for the bust dart intake. Now this bust dart is the difference between the front length and the back length. My front length is 17, my back length is 15 inches, okay? Subtract 17 from 15 is 2 inches. So that is what I did right there. If you have been following my tutorials, all these I'm trying to explain will just be like, yeah, that is normal, okay? So now we are going to move over to the back. You can see I have another paper on top the table. I'm just trying to show you all the important lines that I've outlined. So I have my shoulder, which is right there already. I have my bust point, the waist, and the hip. Now you're going to have to, you can see I've divided my shoulder length into 2, which is 7.5, marked it. My neck width still remains 3.5 inches, but for the neck depth of the back, I used 1 inch. Now for the shoulder slope of the back, I also used 1 inch. And what I did right here was the same thing. So come over to the bust points, measure your shoulder length, make sure you have your shoulder length, and then divide your bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5 inches to have your chest line. Then after that, divide the distance between the shoulder slope and the chest line into 2, go in by 1/8 of an inch. And then after that, move over to the chest line and divide your bust circumference by 4, and then you connect the 3 points together, which is the chest line, the 1/8 of an inch, and the shoulder slope. Now, having done that, you're going to move over to the waist, divide your waist circumference by 4, mark it out, move over to the hip, divide your hip circumference by 4 and mark it out. And then you're going to have to connect the 3 points together, just as you can see me doing like this. And after that, go ahead and connect this part as well. So just basically what I did for the front block, that is what I'm repeating here. And then I'm going to have to divide my nipple to nipple measurement by 2, which is 8 divided by 2. It will give 4. Mark it on the bust point, on the waistline, and on the hip line, and connect with your straight ruler. Okay. Now for my dart depth, I'm going to go down by 7 inches, just like the front. And then I'm going to have to divide what I have in between the space into 3. Already I have my value of hand, so I'm going to input half an inch on both sides. Okay. And then I would connect these to the bust points and then down to the 7 inches mark, just like this. Now, after this, I'm going to also replace half an inch. So this explains why we divide that into 3. You can see we are marking out 3 darts, okay? So 2 at the middle and just 1 of the darts by the side. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. So now this broken line that we are marking out is now the actual body measurements of this sloper. Okay, so that is where we're going to be cutting through from. That is if we are using the dart. Okay, so let me explain something. If you're making use of these darts, you're going to cut through the broken line, but if you're not making use of the darts, you're going to cut out through the one that is inside, okay, just before the dart. I hope you understand. Now also, if you want to make use of the shoulder darts, you're going to have to divide your shoulder slope into 2, just like this. Can you see? And then connect to the bust point. That is if you had to use the shoulder dart, but I'm not sure I'm going to be using it. And here is just me basically showing you what to do in case you want to also make use of the princess armhole line. Okay, so now after this, I'm going to measure the length of my blouse, just like the front. So the length is 7 inches from the waistline, and I'm going to connect it across just like this. Now after this, I will equally come up by 1.5 inches. Okay, just to give the side a little bit of shape. Okay, but I'm still going to modify it after I must have contoured my zipper bulge area. Okay, so now after this, we're going to move over to the waistline. Now from the center of the back, I'm going to come in by half an inch because we want to take off any form of zip bulge around that area. Okay, so go in by half an inch and then connect to the chest line and then down to the length. Can you see what I'm trying to do? So you're going to connect it down to the length, just like this. And then after that, we are also going to like modify a little to take off any form of zip bulge because we don't want our zip to bulge out. Okay, so now what you want to do again to take this out is to go up from the waistline by 0.75 inch and then also come down by 0.75 inch and then connect it just like this to the side. Can you see? And we have taken care of our zip bulge, and that is that. Okay, now remember this is 1.5 inches that has been taken out, so we are going to have to replace it at the hemline because if you don't replace it, by the time you're sewing this, it's going to like become shorter. Okay, so you can see from the hemline I went down by 1.5 inches, and watch what I'll be doing. I will connect it just like this to the side. Okay, now this simply means I'm going to bring in my curve and reconnect from this 1.5 inches. Can you see? So take a look at what I'm going to be doing right there. Okay, so I'm going to reconnect like this, and that is that. Okay, so you can see we are done with the back block. Okay, so by the time you close up that zip bulge area at the waistline, the pattern will come back to normal. Okay, so forget that it is like this for now. By the time you close up that zip bulge that you have taken out, it will come back to the same length. Okay, so yeah, we are done with the back. This is the front, so we are going to start cutting with the front. Okay, so I'm basically just going to keep calm while you watch me cut this out. Yeah, but first of all, if you haven't hit on the subscribe button on YouTube, please do make sure to hit on the subscribe button and also turn on your post notification so that you get notified for whenever we upload a new video. And if you are watching on Facebook, please make sure you follow us because you don't want to be missing out on any of our tutorials. I hope you find this tutorial helpful anyway. If you do make sure to share this video to your family and friends who might be needing this, and you don't know who it might help. And then if you're just a normal person who is not into sewing and you're watching this, please, you can send it to your designer. Maybe you might want to sew this style in future, right? Yeah. So once you come to this bust that area, you're going to have to close it up before cutting it out. Okay, so you can see what I just did right there. And after closing it up, you can either make use of your pin to hold it or make use of the masking tape. Okay, and I also love using the non-original masking tape because you might want to open it up anytime you want. Okay, see guys, for everything I'm telling you in this video, that is just me not trying to hold anything about sewing tips and tricks. Okay, so if you are clever enough, you will get a lot of points from me, right? And yes, so we have entered into cutting of the back, and yeah, I'm also trying to explain that I will not be making use of the shoulder darts, right? Now before I cut out the side, I'm going to have to close up the darts that I removed around the back of the waistline, okay, for the zip bulge. So you can see me trying to close it up. Now once I'm done closing it up, I will go ahead and use my tape to hold it together. If you don't have a masking tape, you can make use of the white solo tape, or you can also make use of a pin. So after closing it up, I went ahead to cut out that part. So without being told, you can see the way the back is like going inwards. Okay, this will help eliminate any form of zip bulge. And then remember I told you I'm not going to be making use of my darts, so you can see where I cut through from. And you guys, that is that we have our back sloper and the front sloper. Remember, we don't have any form of zip allowance or any form of side seam allowance on this sloper. Okay, so before we sew it, we're going to be adding up this allowances. I hope you guys find this tutorial helpful. If you do, please do make sure to give it a thumbs up. I've said this before. I will see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.